Hi, everyone, and welcome to the TAG CRM CX event. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Afshan Ishtiaq. I am one of the board members. I'll be emceeing the event today. The program will start with a panel discussion. Following that, we will have a roundtable session with the panelists and moderated by the TAG board members. For that, the audience will be sent to the breakout rooms. Uh, we have a great panel lined up for us. I'll give you the introduction. Brian Abrams. Brian is the VP Product and Consumer Experience at LivePerson. Brian has 15 years of expertise in digital, automotive, and retail industry. Um, he has a passion for products, services that innovates consumer experience and operational efficiencies, sorry. Aaron Thompson is the Chief Revenue Officer at Success Coaching, the leading provider of customer success training and education. He's a connector, educator, and public speaker with more than 20 years of experience in helping companies, improving retention rates, and increase in revenue. Rennie Preston is the Enterprise Agile Coach, Chief Methodologist at TaskTop. Danny has 25 years of experience in leading digital transformations and successfully delivering technology solutions in variety of industries, including healthcare, nonprofits, and legal. He's also a public speaker and an educator. When the pandemic first hit in 2020, there was a lot of discussion about life post-pandemic and building back better strategies and transformations. While many businesses have struggled, there are companies who pivoted and experienced growth and success. Companies such as Netflix, Amazon, and Tesla. Um, what are the common traits that we see between these companies? Definitely business agility, but most importantly, the customer-centric vision that they have. And that's what is the focus of our society here at CRM CX Tech Society. Our mission is to build a central platform for the CX community in Georgia. We are a diverse group of professionals focused to build a dedicated platform for the CX community. Our mission is to create an intellectually open environment through knowledge sharing and ideation. We have regular meetings and networking events that provide a regular forum for the technology business professionals, connecting individuals and organizations who are looking to be part of the CX space. I will ask Pilar. She will be the moderator for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Afi, and welcome everybody again. Just a couple of housekeeping here as we transition to the panel. So we have Brian, Aaron, and Danny that's going to be spotlighted. We do have 45 minutes, an exciting alignment of questions. In terms of view, we recommend that you watch on a speaker view for the best user experience, and obviously, as we all know, mute your phone. And you will have, so this session, this 40 minutes or so, is primarily for us to ask these great chief panel, what they're seeing there after the pandemic. You will have an opportunity to ask questions afterwards. So with that being said, welcome Brian, Aaron, and Danny for your time here. So let's go ahead and get started. So I know we've all talked about post-pandemic, but I mean, we can never talk enough. So the first question is about, as it relates to customer experience. We did hear what customer experience mean is continually changing. We started to hear a little bit about trust. How do you build trust through customer experience? And now this past 12 months is about safety. So we hear a lot about how do you build that safety from a customer experience standpoint. So I'll let you guys react to that and just give me your point of view on what you've seen there. Companies building that safety environment, whether it's with employees or customers.
Yeah, so any particular person jump in or just kind of free?
It looks like Danny was ready to go.
This one is, I do, for some of them, I have you guys spotted. So, but for this one, it's like, I want to hear each of you guys, because this is really important. I get asked these all the time.
Go for it, Danny.
How do you build safety?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe if we don't do monologues and do that, but chime in with whatever, guys. I get pretty free form here.
So, Danny.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, so I think it's been an interesting year, maybe interesting couple years on that theme of trust and safety. So like, at the surface level, like, can I trust you with my data? The number of breaches and hacks and all that kind of stuff has just been on the rise. So, part of that is creating, good, robust, secure environments that customers can trust you, whatever it is they give you. But even bigger than that is, can I trust my affiliation with your brand? That's kind of been an interesting thread that's emerged, as all the cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. If I associate myself with the brand on social media or whatever, can I trust that you're gonna not get me in trouble with that? And so definitely a lot to consider on that. I'd say those are hugely important. And so, to me, I think your last bit of that question is, how do you build that safety and trust? And I think, being consistent is key on that. And really delivering on what you say you're going to do over time. It's not just enough to say it, you've got to actually deliver it. So that's not necessarily new. That's been kind of how you build trust since eons ago, right? Yeah, that's kind of my initial thought there, just to kind of warm it up there.
When I heard safety, this is like the thing with customer experience, right? Every customer, consumer, employee has a different perception or a different expectation of things. So Danny went off and talked about safety and data and all that. And I kind of had that in the back of my head, but I was tying it to the pandemic and the way that, people are working now, shopping now, interacting with brands now. All these, businesses that thrived in person, whether it's car dealerships, whether it's retail stores, whether it's restaurants, they thrived, and we saw what happened. So now, things are opening up, regulations are different now. But, during that time, things changed, right? And people learned new behaviors, and brands made them feel safe in different ways. And it wasn't just about, wear a mask inside here and we regulate it, right? That was like almost everywhere. But it was some of the technology that I saw in a lot of different places, whether it was my company doing it or just in my experiences out there, in that, brands enabled, if they were doing it right, enabled consumers to try to go about normal life, normal shopping tasks, normal service tasks, normal appointments in different ways, whether it was through video conferencing like we're doing today. I don't know if these meetings were maybe in person before. I know we're all remote, or we're maybe in Georgia, but look, we're all doing Zoom now, and we're all used to it. Whether it was QR codes, whether it was being able to get serviced by somebody remotely curbside, whether it is COVID tests, at home COVID tests to help people get back to work. There's lots of different, feelings and emotions going on in companies, with consumers, with brands and companies, that technology and processes, respect, and things were a major factor. And it's a big topic, but just wanted to kind of warm that one up for Aaron.
Yeah, I mean, I think with COVID, safety took a different meaning, right?
Exactly.
I mean, physical safety. Aaron, success coaching, what are you seeing?
Yeah, well, thanks for the opportunity. First off, I'm joining from Portland, Oregon, out here on the left coast, and that's our logo. That's a unicorn, if you couldn't tell. What we aim to do is make unicorns out of customer success managers. So I always like to explain that before I get too far down the road, or else people sit there and think, what the heck is the deal with the donkey? So again, thank you for the opportunity to be here and talk with everybody. I think what we're really talking about, kind of to try to summarize sort of what Danny's point and Brian's point was, it's the maturation of trust, right? And what trust meant originally was very different, to Danny's point around digital safety, right? And building that trust that way. And then literal health concerns and safety brings us all. And the companies that meet the customer where they are at the right level of maturation, because I would argue that people are actually less concerned about online identity theft, for example, today than they were 5-10 years ago. And that's because as breaches have happened and as social security numbers have been stolen, we've learned that it's, not a perfect science. You got to kind of assume today, in today's day, anything you put online is just public record, basically.
Yeah.
Right? And, I've had my Gmail account hacked, where they actually found my 401k documents and called my financial advisor asking for a cash out. The only way I found out was because he called me and said, "What are you doing? Why are you asking to cash out your 401k?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And I mean, all the way to submitting taxes. So now I have to get a specific PIN number every year from the IRS directly so that I can actually submit my taxes and pay my taxes every year. And yeah, it was a pain in the neck, but I think going through those experiences and millions of customers and consumers worldwide having to deal with those types of things, it sort of takes the fear away when you go through some of those things. So as a brand, we can actually meet customers in a different way, whether it be virtual, if we're talking about, and curbside and all of those things, or obviously, I thought Danny had a great point around like the brand and the association on social media. There's a lot of, safety, quote unquote, that is there as well. But as we become more mature as online digital consumers, I think companies are afforded new and innovative ways. And to your point there at the beginning, Pilar, these companies who have thrived during these pandemics and during this massive shift to digital are the ones who have been able to meet their customer where they are and make that a frictionless experience, whether that's curbside or QR codes or any of the examples that we just went through.
One thing, just kind of piling on that before we move on, if that's okay, if you got it, if I move on, I totally respect.
Go ahead.
But an interesting dichotomy I was kind of watching this past year, which I think really kind of came into full bloom this past year, was you've got a bunch of stuff that you can do to help society be safer, especially as a result of pandemic. Like, my phone collects all my location data, so it can start to, interpose that with other people's location data. And then if somebody reports they've got COVID, I could be contact traced and informed, hey, you might want to go get tested, right? And so part of society says, oh man, how helpful is that? This is great. Thank you, big brother, for keeping me safe. And then part of society sees that and says, oh, here we go. I'm not safe giving you my location data, because who knows how you'll use it beyond that. And so what was interesting to me is those challenges came up, in the first 6 months, and there was a visceral response from one part of society and an accepting response from another. It was really interesting to me how companies gave people the choice to opt in or opt out of that. And even like with Apple's latest iOS, like I can choose app by app, how much data it can collect from other apps. I thought that was a really good tool that they gave people to kind of be able to choose their own level of what they want to do. And I feel like from from a customer experience standpoint, that's a key thing. Like, just because we can do something as a company doesn't mean we should. We should kind of enable tools, provide our customers with tools that they can kind of select in and out of how they want to control the ability that they interact with our products.
Yeah, you know, Danny, I'm going to jump in real quick, because that what came to mind as you talked about this was a couple of years ago, I was lucky enough to go to Tel Aviv and do a keynote at the first ever customer success conference in the Middle East. And as part of that trip, I met the chief knowledge officer of the city of Tel Aviv, and they had won the smartest city in the world contest a few years prior for this program they called Digitel. And if you opt into Digitel, you get all sorts of services, social services, free classes, AI-enabled recommendations of Facebook groups that you may want to be a part of. For example, you just registered a dog. Well, here's a dog walking group in your neighborhood. You know, it's a real world example that they would recommend to their members. And so my first question to Zohar was, what did people think of this? You know, like, how do you manage this fear of Big Brother watching everything I'm doing? And he said they opt out or they opt in. You know, no one's automatically opted in. They have to come and apply and opt into it. And so they are providing the access, right? The consent to then navigate this. And it was amazing. About 50% of the entire population of the city had opted in. And of those, about 90% of them never opted back out, because they got so much value out of that. And over time, the trust was earned that they weren't going to use it to market to you and sell to you, et cetera. Now, obviously, Israel is a very small country. Tel Aviv is a small population, relatively speaking, but just amazingly, you know, smart. Like, when you look at like a smart city, I was like, what does that even mean, really? Because I was just kind of thought it was like all the traffic lights talk to each other, and like, you know, they kept the city moving more efficiently or something. Oh no, it was a personal thing, right? It was all the way down to pet ownership, for example. And I think that's the big thing, to your point there, Danny, is providing the consumer, and in their case, the community, the opportunity to pick and choose or say yes or no, in or out, and not have the terms and conditions that we never read opt us into something that, you know, if we were the customer, we wouldn't have necessarily said yes to. I think that's the line that companies have to walk between innovative and enablement and recommendation, et cetera, and violating their customers' trust by slipping something in there.
That's a great point. So a lot of us work for companies where the customer experience is actually delivered through employees. Employee experience is extremely important. So the whole, you know, we've all gone through crazy amount of change, and you know, in terms of how we work, how we keep employees engaged, how we collaborate. You know, we've heard things like, you know, enabling self-service tools for employees, creating, you know, these some companies have been really creative about the spaces to meet and collaborate. So what could you say about the employee experience and what we are seeing, and you know, what is here to stay, and you know, what is going to be undone? I mean, you're hearing a lot of offices now, a lot of companies going, okay, let's all go back to the office, right? And you know, and some are going, okay, let's stop. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty about, you know, what do you do in terms of employee experience, especially for companies that deliver the value to the customer through the employee.
Yeah, I can start. We've done a couple unique things, not only for our company, but for other companies as well. Internally at LivePerson, within a month of the pandemic hitting, we broke all of our leases all over the globe, and we were work from home permanently, immediately, like knee-jerk reaction for all the right reasons, right? We're a messaging and AI company. We're drinking our own champagne. So now we're doing that. Now, that is a huge change, right? For any company that you just say, oh, you're working from home now. And lots of companies have gone through this and have struggled with it. What we did was we brought people together inside that wanted to be part of the change. And we called it a beehive. And what we did was we broke it into different segments or topics ultimately. So
Mhm.
health and wellness, because that's obviously important from an employee experience and morale perspective. Education, because no kids were going to school anymore.
Mhm.
Parenting, and then location and destination ultimately, which basically, like, the premise behind that was, oh, now that we're work from home, you can work from wherever you want to in the world now. There's no more offices, so you don't have to stay in Atlanta. You don't have to stay in Seattle or Portland. You can go wherever you want to. So that changes an entire dynamic with time zones and how you work together with people. So what they did was they formed these teams of internal people that had the focus, drew up the plan, had the business plan, got budget, presented to the CEO all the way up, right? Like, it was this big kind of thing. They put out surveys, they had focus groups, they had peer groups and different things where they weren't just working in a bubble either, but it was kind of like this organic, homegrown, crowdsourcing idea where, like a true democracy, ultimately, like, where we were really deciding what our future of work was going to be. So it's really interesting because it's evolved obviously over time, and now things are coming back. So now we're having to deal with the reality of some things, and some things fall off, obviously, and then things are getting back to normal. But really quickly, like, what we're doing for other companies as well, which I think is really important, and this kind of ties into the safety, is for the companies that have not gone back yet and are now thinking about going back, how are you making your employees feel safe? Because there are people out there that aren't vaccinated, or they are vaccinated, but still, deathly afraid of, what's going on. There's people that are now afraid of even human interaction to that point, depending on where you are, right? It's very different now. And, so they have to deal with that. But the at-home COVID testing programs that are out there and the products that are there are something that makes employees feel safe. And we're involved in that from a messaging standpoint, where, hey, a company, we have a few of them, they send out COVID tests to all their employees, and then the employee can take it, and then they can speak to their HR department just live with with these tests. So there's a safety thing, but also, what you're talking about is employee experience and making people feel safe that they want to go back to work as well.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a key theme that I see, Brian, in the companies that do it well or do it poorly. So I ride bicycles a good bit, and I was on a group ride Saturday, and one of the regulars was talking about how he loves this job, but he's going to be looking for a new job, and was wanting to network and stuff. And I was like, wait, hold on, you love your job, why are you looking for a new job? He's like, well, they're forcing us to go back to the office, and I just don't want to have that commute again. And so you got him on one side. He was just going to uproot his career, go find somebody let's work. At the same way, today I got an email from the CEO, like, company-wide email, and he returned to the office for the first time. They let 15 people into the office, and he was just ecstatic to finally be, in a place where he could concentrate on work and, all that kind of stuff. It was like the exact opposite reaction for him. And so I think everybody's unique. Everyone's an individual. And so the less that you force an edict down and let people kind of choose for themselves, the better it is in every way that you can. Like, I'd want to decentralize as absolutely much as I could, even down to, like, do you like working on a Mac or a PC? I was kind of crushed. I had a transferred jobs recently, and I went from a 13-inch Mac to a 15-inch, and it's just, I don't know why that 2 inches is killing me, but it's like, come on, man, the screen's in my way.
First world problem.
I know, right, man. And so like, even that, like, give folks the option to choose if they want to, wear bifocals or not, as they look at their computer. So anyway, I think the more choice you give people, the better it's going to be. Companies that are going to suffer, I think, are the ones that demand it one way or the other.
Yeah, it's a timely question for something I was spending all morning preparing for, and we'll be wrapping up when we get done here this evening. I'm doing a keynote tomorrow at a conference, and if anybody's interested to attend, you can just find me on LinkedIn, and I'll send you the link. And the keynote that I'm doing is called Teammate Success Equals Customer Success. And I'm taking core customer success components and foundational kind of things that make up the customer success practice. One of which is a very basic formula. And we say this a lot in my world of customer success. And there's overlap with customer experience. And so we always try to kind of figure out where does one stop, the other begin, et cetera. But we use this formula that CS, I was like, oh man, is that my dog? Could have been. The customer's definition of success, CS, equals the customer's desired outcome. So what they're hoping to accomplish by using your tool or product or service, and that's CO, plus the customer's desired experience, CX. So if we can deliver what they want in a better experience than our competition, we will have delivered a higher volume of customer success. What I'm doing tomorrow is taking it and changing it from customer to teammate. So the teammate's definition of success is the teammate's desired outcome, getting paid, benefits, safety, retirement, whatever, plus the teammate's desired experience. Working 5 days a week, not 6. I can work from home or I can go into the office. I can work on a Mac or a PC. All of those things that Danny was just talking about fall on the experience side. And as we look to move back to normal, whatever that ends up being, I think companies are going to be surprised to find that their teammates' definition of success has changed, not along the outcome. We all work for money, and it's a means to an end, right? Not many people work if they hit the lottery. And so that means in order to achieve that outcome, how do we want to achieve it? And that's going to, I think, surprise a lot of leaders and businesses and departments that people have found an experience where they can be home with their families more. They don't have to commute. They don't have to get into a city and out of a city. Or to Brian's point, they can move into rural areas if they're working for a completely remote company, and now they can live wherever they want. Maybe they didn't want to be in a city, but they had to be because they had to get into the office every day. Part of the teammate experience is completely different today than it was 18 months ago. And I think the companies who get as in tune with that as possible, and if they have their own reasoning, right, we're going to be 100% in person, fine, just be ready for a lot of turnover from people who used to maybe enjoy it to a degree, but have just found this new lifestyle, this work style that works so much better for them in their holistic lives, because we've got professional and personal, and they both impact each other significantly. And all of a sudden, a lot of companies were really good at switching to digital. And now if they try to pull that digital life away from their employees, they're going to find them, their employees are going to go find other places that have that TX of digital with still the same TO of getting paid the same 401k and whatever the outcome is we're looking to accomplish. It's interesting because I've literally been thinking about this all morning today. I was building up this presentation for tomorrow, and it's right in line with that. I think the companies that get into that experience side, and make it as personal as possible are going to be the winners as we move back into some sort of hybrid new normal that we see with companies reopening offices, et cetera.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot, always scratching. We're also working on an exercise, how to enable the sales team. And that's kind of where we're heading, is we need to really understand what they want. We've been really focused on which is the right focus, right? Who is the customer, giving them the tools, but try to understand the sales team and, the kind of experience they want to have in actually, approaching customers and dealing with customers. So it's a very interesting topic. Makes it even more confusing. So now thinking about tools and intelligence, this was a kind of growing trend prior to COVID that got accelerated. So this is from Forrester. In 2021, they estimate about 10% of the customer intelligence budget will go towards a relatively new field of emotion analytics. So do all. Now we're taking VOC to a whole new level. Emotion, something that is even further, less tangible. How do you, my first question when I read that is, how do you sell that, right? It was very hard to sell any kind of VOC investment, especially on the data side, 5 years ago. How do you sell, I want to measure somebody's emotion? How do you go about that? And what have you seen in the space, companies that are doing these really well?
AI, you teach it, from a messaging or a voice perspective, if you're talking about call centers, emails, and AI does this for you. And if your customer or your company is not investing in AI now to measure the emotion, based on these trends, they need to be planning on it, and most are, according to the research. And when you train AI to know these things, you can deliver better experiences in real time, ultimately. And if you're measuring it in real time, you can deflect or get the right people involved. You can escalate things. You can transfer things. You can follow up with things to provide or even reconcile a bad customer experience, ultimately, because you don't want to wait for somebody to tweet something. You don't want somebody to leave a bad review, email the CEO and say, oh yeah, I talked to Brian, and oh man, you don't want any of that, right? So there's definitely the AI pathway to be able to do that. And once you build that foundation and have that, and you're measuring it, now it's got to be integrated into whatever tools whatever your business is, right? Where if it is an in-store experience, if it's in software like we have a what we call a meaningful connection score, and it's a MCS, and our AI reads conversations in real time as people are messaging through Apple, through Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, on web, SMS, and we're reading what the customer's emotion is. And it's like a meter, it's between 0 and 100, or actually, sorry, a negative 100 and 100, and with 0 being neutral. So as things are happening, if let's say a bot is handling the conversation and that thing's going under 0, you can configure triggers for it to go to a human, right? The bot's getting out of hand, and people are people are getting upset and typing in all caps and things like that, or things can get escalated to managers. And then afterwards, when you're measuring like call centers or agents or your entire unit with how they cared for a customer through a digital experience, those meaningful connection scores matter, and it leads to coaching opportunities, it leads to training opportunities, it leads to Aaron's company coming in and doing some customer success things. It leads to a lot of things, but you got to start measuring it ultimately.
And I also like the it's kind of a new emerging field where not just reactively, like what do we do to with an angry customer if we can recognize that, but even proactively, like which of these two products or which of these two experiences should we spend money on or further develop. I was watching Disney Channel. Jeff Goldblum has a show there that's like, I've watched all the episodes a year ago. They need to get some more out there, but there's one where he was studying sneakers. And so he was at one of the big brands. I can't remember. It might've been Nike or Asics, but they basically made him put some glasses on that read his emotional response to a pair of shoes. And so they could kind of start to sculpt, hey, did this one trigger the pleasure centers of the brain more than this one, even though the performance might've been the same. And so I think that's a really powerful place to go as we think through product development as well, and which experience to make investments in or not.
Can I buy those glasses for my customers, by the way?
I'm not sure that I want to know. I don't know.
It's interesting. The glasses is interesting. I was meeting with a company recently who has a product that it's a SaaS product that works with your smartwatch to measure your level of engagement while you're watching a video or an ad or engaging with a website while you're doing something. They were talking to me about, wouldn't it be great to know, are people just hitting play and then going and making dinner as part of our customer success certification? We've got self-paced stuff online. And so they just hitting play and walking away, or are they actually there and engaged? And it's like bleeding edge technology, right? Because that's going to creep a lot of people out too, but they're also signing up for it. So how does that work in a B2B sense, or is it just direct to consumer, and all these different questions? But all of it is along the lines of we're constantly trying to quantify the qualitative in business.
Mhm.
Things that we're gut feel, we want to know why so we can replicate them. Happiness scores don't mean anything, for example. Happy customers leave all the time if they don't get the outcome they're looking to accomplish, and angry customers stay if you're the only way for achieve my outcome. For example, Comcast. I don't like Comcast, but they're the only internet provider here in this place. I pay them happily every month, even though I'm not what you would call a promoter. And so that's always, we're always trying to do that in business, right? Is quantify the qualitative. And I think that's what we're talking about. As omni-channel, kind of what Brian was saying, like as omni-channel continues to get more omni every day, we get more and more different avenues to have to try to pay attention to. It gets more and more complex, but it's all in that interest of the glasses at Nike, to Danny's point, right? We want to try to put some science and data behind these qualitative kinds of reactions from customers, prospects, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a kind of something else that I read actually from a center was the shift in product development methodology from making products that are easy to use to making products that continually adapt how customers use them. And so what are some of the, so Danny, in your world, as agile coach, kind of bringing, value quicker to customers, what are you seeing and what do you recommend to us that are kind of fighting that battle of adapting quickly and doing the right adaptations to product?
Yeah, well, I think Brian
or services
earlier, just last question when he said AI. So, to me, there's like, if I have a inkling of what a cool app would be to, I don't know, find what I'm looking for in a grocery store. I can design that product up front and think, man, let me make it as user-friendly as possible. And here's what I think most people would use, how they use it. But if I can collect analytics on that and understand how that individual actually uses it, and then, reconfigure the tool. So I put search results in a different place or actually make the tool kind of respond a little differently based on usage patterns. Because, let's be real, right? Most of the tools that we have, that we use, apps, programs, whatever, the average user uses maybe 10% of the features that are available, maybe 20 if you're lucky. And so if you can go by user and understand which of the features matter to them and then present those first, that makes a huge difference. I think that's kind of what they were getting at when Accenture was writing that. And so that's kind of a shift, right? Because in the past, we've tried to do a bunch of market research to figure out the one way to develop something. And really, we want to build something that's more responsive.
Has anybody seen The Social Dilemma? Have you watched that on Netflix yet? Highly recommend it. You may never want to use the app ever again, but it's all talking about this and how do they essentially gamify, gamification, multi-billion-dollar industry. It is that way because it does affect human behavior. It affects user behavior. It affects that habitual sort of change management around how to become a sticky or drive sticky customers or users. But it's a fascinating watch. If you haven't seen it, highly recommend it. The whole reason it exists is because it works. Notifications, little red dots. When I get a number on my inbox, I cannot not click my email. Like I just can't. That's over years and years of behavior, So I think there's a lot of elements in there. And to Danny's point, if you can do it right, you can actually create additional value, remove friction for your users, all while delivering the outcome or whatever they're looking to accomplish from your tool, product, service, et cetera. But it's again, I think there's that line to walk kind of between like doing it for good and doing it for our own daily active user over monthly active user count. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's good for us. That's not necessarily good for the customer or the user. So anyway, I digress.
Yeah, that's interesting. So some of us work for like really large companies, and customer experience continue to become more and more complicated, meaning we have to engage more and more departments. For example, where I work, the logistics department now have to really be concerned about customer experience because of all the supply restrictions that we do have, and the need to supply faster. So what are some what you see companies doing to bring some of the other departments that typically, for them, the idea of customer experience is a foreign concept, into the equation, to partner with them and to make them part of the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think one of the key paradigm shifts is understanding everybody delivers value to a customer somewhere, or you should, right? Like that's kind of why you exist. Now the customer may be external, and it's this persona that the marketing department or whatever has developed, or maybe an internal customer if you're working in that way, like the logistics department or something that. But I think having that focus, everyone really being focused on who their customer is and making sure they deliver value is a game changer. And because once you can identify with that person, the product you're delivering can almost become an expression of love or respect for that particular individual. And you put a lot more emotion into it. You're a lot more engagement into it because you can see I'm making this person's life better or worse. Companies that don't do that, where, hey, we deliver a backlog or what's the priority, and it doesn't consider customer impact, it tends to be kind of more of a lifeless, dead, rote kind of dealer. So I think that one subtle shift of everyone should have, some kind of a customer canvas that who's consuming the work they do. It's not just the marketing department doing that for external customers. That's an important shift.
So Aaron, in your world, what do you do? What do I do to make the folks in the logistics department be more customer centric? They look at me as I have three heads.
Yeah, they looked at me as if I had three heads too when I was the head of customer success a few times. So anytime we want to persuade without authority, we have to position the messaging in a WIFM format. What's in it for me? So if I want to persuade my external customer in trying something because I think it'll be in their best interest, I have to show them why they should. I don't have a stick to make them do it. I've only got a carrot, right, to try to attract them to give it a shot. Same thing with other parts of the organization. So when we talk about how to drive customer centricity into a company's culture, it's all about why should marketing care? Well, how is marketing, for example, being held accountable, right? Probably marketing qualified leads and then, into some sort of deal close or some sort of SEO, pay-per-click, I don't know, but I need to understand how they get promoted or get fired, and then position how being customer-centric is going to help them be better at how they are held accountable. Same thing with sales. Once we get the customer into the funnel, why should they worry about a long-standing customer as opposed to just signing every customer they can find and throwing it over the fence to the post-sale relationship management, whether that's account managers or CSMs or whoever is going to have to deal with it, support, whatever. But my job as a salesperson is to get deals closed. And if that's the only way I'm incentivized, that's all I'm going to focus on. As opposed to if I'm incentivized on renewal and expansion and advocacy and customer marketing plays, now I'm looking and seeking out better fit customers because it's in my interest. It's all about what's in it for me. And then some questions that we advise and kind of teach, a lot of this is in our foundational certification, but what would our customers think? How is this going to impact our customers? And what can we do differently? Are the three questions we need to ask at the leadership level when we're talking about roadmap and features and product development and anything that we're looking to do that's going to impact the customer at that core product or service level. We have to first off ask those three questions. And just by doing that over time, that starts to shape the culture. I knew I was doing something right when I was hired as the head of customer success to fix the churn problem. And I said, okay, fine, but I have to have input into our product roadmap, our marketing messaging, our branding. I have to be able to work soup to nuts through the life cycle because I can't fix the churn problem if we're mis-selling and mis-marketing and misrepresenting ourselves. And so down at the bottom of the funnel, right? You'll never be successful working post-sale. So I had to then convince them that, yeah, let me into that boardroom, let me have some input into that. And I started asking that question, what will our customers think? Over and over and over. This company had been around about 6 years, had never grown because they had a 40% year-over-year churn rate. And I knew I was doing something right when the two co-founders and the CEO started rolling their eyes and said, God, you always ask that question. Like, do you ever think about anything else? At that point, I knew I was starting to shape some culture because they were starting to anticipate those types of questions. But there's real tactical things that we can do. But anytime we want to try to drive customer centricity, help other non-customer facing roles be more customer centric, we've got to get them closer to the customer. And that can be through customer testimonials. If you have a newsletter, digital newsletter for your employees, above the fold, a designated area, ideally a little box where you have a 1-minute video taken by your customer, of your customer, talking about their experience with your company and your brand. And I got news for you, they ain't going to talk about your product features and functions and bells and whistles. They're going to talk about the pain point that they had and then how you've helped them alleviate that, or the gain point that they were looking to achieve and how you help them achieve that. That's what they're going to talk about, their lives.
Yeah.
And continue to put that in front of people who don't work with customers every day like we do in support success. And the one way to do that is to literally bring them to your monthly, and this is just one of the examples, but that monthly idea. Bringing them to all hands to tell their stories. We've done that one. Earlier in my career when we all actually met in person. It's even easier now, right? Like I wouldn't have a chance to be speaking at the Technology Association in Georgia without having to fly across the country for this digitalization that we now all experience. So leverage that. Use that advantage to put your customer in front of people who don't see them every day.
That's great advice. We were challenged with that. So we only have a couple of minutes, but I have one last question. We lost Brian here. And I think this is really relevant. And Danny, you mentioned a little bit of this, is the role of us as customers experience practitioner and social impact, the social impacts that we have as companies. I've been asked this a few times, how much focus and or attention should companies be paying to this social impact? And sometimes we as customer experience practitioners get pulled into this. It's a bigger theme, right? It's more for for a CEO to think about. But what are your thoughts about, how much focus and attention we should have, and what can we do from a customer experience standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, that's that's a very deep question, right? Because no one wants to be the next subject of Upton Sinclair's Jungle, 2021 version, right? Where we just kind of don't care about the long-term repercussions of our ability to make profit, and we just go blindly make profit. So I think, since the early 1900s, right, that's been kind of an awareness of, it's not just how the outcome is, but how we actually get to that outcome is important. And so, all the more that's the case, whether it comes to, what the work-life balance is for our employees, or the impact we have on a product, through its manufacturer, or what happens with it after it leaves our hands and is in the hands of users. So all that's critical. And so the tough part there is oftentimes you don't know the full impact of what you're doing when you're doing it. I don't think Steve Jobs had this thought when he made an iPhone that he was going to change the attention span, your basically ability to pay attention to stuff, to seconds instead of minutes, by inventing an iPhone. So it's tough to kind of know the long-term impact of the products you're making. So that's when I think it should be a question that you ask as you're going through your customer journey and the backlog. What is the downstream impact this will have on our user? What value is it going to add? What potential things would it do? Aaron, that social dilemma that you mentioned, I think is case in point of that. Just because we can do it and it's profitable, should we do it? And I think that's a kind of a moral question there. So I guess there's so many ways to take that thing. The other social impact is maybe beyond product. What am I doing to promote equality and justice, in addition to my brand? And that's another one where I'd say, it's very important. I think it's meaningful for your employees to be involved in something bigger than just transferring money from one bank account to another. But, in that process, we're actually making the world a better place. But it is a slippery slope where, you're there to actually produce that product and not necessarily to change all the others. So it's, again, to me, it's a case by case deal of what's the right decision to make. And I guess the litmus test I'd be going through that is how does this express love to my employees? How does it express love to the people that are pursuing it? And I think if you or that are consuming it. And so, as long as you're kind of running it through that, like, hey, this isn't just a self-centered thing, but we're doing it to make a customer's life better, to help our employees better live their life too, then you're probably pretty safe in that regard.
Yeah.
I think, we make business decisions every day based on personal preference, and more, the social impact of a company, brand, otherwise, plays into those purchasing decisions. My 10-year-old son the other day, Dad, I never want to eat at Jimmy John's because I heard they kill big game, a big game hunter. Like even 10-year-olds are finding out, and like, how did you find out? Oh, there's this kid at school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
TikTok.
Like, there's a lot of places we can go get a sandwich where you don't have that social dilemma to overcome. But and so it's, that's just a sentiment to like the younger generation, I think actually cares more. And it's just going to become more and more important for companies to really get this right. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Jeannie Bliss, author, customer experience, public speaker, et cetera. Her latest book, Would You Do That to Your Mother? I think is a perfect sentiment to what we're talking about. If you wouldn't do it to your mom, you shouldn't be doing it to your users or your company or your customers, your teammates, et cetera. I think it's a very easy litmus test for us all to follow.
Yes, it's just another lever as customer experience practitioners that now we have to sort of have in the back of our head is the social impact. So, well, thank you very much. This brings us to the end. Swami, you're going to, we're now going to transition to the breakout rooms where we'll have
Danny, Aaron, and Brian. But we'll move into the roundtable, and really what we are opening up the floor for is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to bring forth questions on this topic, whether it's CRM, CX, EX, and to have our panel or board members here share their experiences and their knowledge with you guys.
Yeah, any challenges that you may be experiencing in your company.
So it's Russell here, and I've got a question. Throw it out there for Danny and Aaron, and anybody else wants to chime in. Great discussion so far, and much of it seems, however, to be focused on perhaps larger companies with more wherewithal, talking about using AI to determine, customer emotion and, is a bot interacting, and lots of great use of technology. But so much of the employment universe are smaller companies where your interactions are really just with people. And increasingly that is, okay, maybe you're dealing with a live person on a chat, not a bot. You're dealing with someone on the phone. And so looking at these smaller companies and the challenges that they face not having technology to utilize, coupled with COVID and the fact that we've got many people changing jobs for, again, all the reasons discussed and all the usual reasons, onboarding new employees into customer-facing roles and having them get some sense of the company culture, when in many cases their interview was online, they've never actually been to the office. They can read about the company culture, they'll get the honeymoon version from whoever interviewed them, and here's what we do, and here's what we stand for, and rah, rah. But how are you seeing people really onboarding new employees in customer-facing roles in a way that they are truly getting some sense of what the company culture is, in a way that's meaningful to them, that it's not just lip service?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in first, Aaron. That's cool. So Russell, one thing that I think I would maybe make a blanket statement here. We are recording, so don't use this against me. But I'd say company culture as a whole through 2021, remote has taken a turn for the worse. Like it's just people are surviving, some better than others. And heck, I work remote. I enjoy it. I don't think I'd want to go back to an office, but it's not the same as it was, 10 years ago when you're all in the office and you can have, Friday afternoon cocktail hour or something like that. It's just different. And so to me, a key thing is you have to do some things that don't scale. And I think oftentimes we have this mentality, like, if I can't do it for everyone, I shouldn't do it for anyone, like I can't take, all of my family to Europe. So nobody ever goes to Europe. Instead, like, well, maybe I just take one daughter to Europe and I could go spend time with her. It's just because you can't do it for everyone doesn't mean you shouldn't do it for anyone. So kind of cut to the chase on that. With new employee onboarding, things like that, and just getting them acclimated to company culture, or also the customer, the personas that we're trying to support. Shadowing, spending one-on-one time where, it may not be the most efficient way to go, but it'll pay dividends in the long run. And similar with getting into our customer's head, as a smaller company, you may not have all the technology to go, sense emotions across the internet about how people are going, get your net promoter score with a fine degree of certainty and know what ticks it up or down a notch. But you can certainly go talk to customers. And I think the one thing I see with small companies a lot of times is somebody will be that customer persona that's a product manager also. I worked in a cycling company for a while, and I'm a big cyclist. So I just assumed everybody was like me because I was the persona, right? And I really had to make sure I didn't fall into that trap and go talk to other people, understand why they might use a product different than I do, or what they like about it that was different than I do. So hitting a lot of data points in a way that doesn't scale might be the best way to go. And then, you figure out how to scale it later, or, as the need presents. But I think it comes back to that one-on-one time.
Yeah.
We did that too. Go ahead, Aaron.
I was going to say, I would echo that. I mean, I think it's just more and more difficult in the digital world of, the dispersed, when you don't have the office for the 5 o'clock happy hours. It's got to be more challenging for HR directors and people who are really championing what their culture is at their organization. I don't think it's impossible. And I'm sure that the companies who do it well will become the winners in terms of employee engagement and satisfaction and recruiting costs, et cetera. But I think it's got to be a challenge, a very, very high challenge to overcome for these companies. I would love to hear from anybody who works somewhere who feels like their culture has gotten better since quarantine. Do anybody feel more connected to their teammates in their community than they did before, and what changed, if so?
Yeah, this is Swami here. Actually, we have a great example going on live within our organization. Once COVID hit, we are a consulting firm, right? It's easy for us to work remotely, but we started doing that once COVID hit. But essentially, some of our team members really were very interested in focusing a lot more on culture, on organizational development, and so in fact, I have Katie, who's on the call here, who's actually joined us she was interning with us, and now she's joined us as an organizational development specialist. And really, there's been a very intentional focus on culture within our organization. So, going back to some of the comments that were made earlier about customer focus and customer centricity, I mean, that's a place where we've really spent a lot of time in this last year and a half, bringing our team members closer to our customers and their stories. That's something we've very consciously invested in. But I think the question was really, really great, and I also love Danny's comment about there are things that you can do for some people, and there are things that you can't do for everyone, and being open to all those. Allowing for more choices in that sense for employees, I think is going to be very important, because at the end of the day, these employees are the ones that are going to be representing us as an organization to our customers.
Yeah, speaking as someone, thanks Swami. So I work with Swami, and I've worked with him for the past year and have never met him in person. But I think the one thing that has really made a difference for me culture-wise, I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee. Swami and Spar are based in Atlanta. Is occasionally we'll have meetings where it's just for fun. We're just meeting for lunch. We're doing something that's not super externally focused, but having a little bit of downtime scheduled to get to know people. in a casual environment where we can take a little bit of time to chat, and setting that time aside has really made a difference for me in getting to know my coworkers and getting to know that culture in action. And like Swami said, we're working on that and trying to figure out what's the best way to move forward in this dispersed workforce. But that has made the most difference to me, is having some time set aside to get to know my coworkers in an informal setting.
I had one coworker. It was like such the coolest thing ever. I'm like still like blown away. And it was a small gesture, but he wanted to. So he lived in Florida. I'm in Atlanta. And we couldn't get together to hang out. And so he sent me a Starbucks gift card, via email. Like, take this code to your local Starbucks and you get $10 of coffee. And he's like, hey, let's have coffee together. You go to your Starbucks, I'll go to mine, and we'll hang out and have coffee. And I was like, man, that's like sheer genius. Why didn't I think of that? But it's like little stuff like that. You can overcome some of those barriers. Like, just because we're not in the same office doesn't mean we can't go to coffee together, but it just takes forethought. And I think most people are so busy. Like, we've packed our schedules full, meeting to meeting to meeting. We never have that downtime. So we lack that creativity or even the empathy, just because we're surviving. And so I've really tried to kind of par my schedule back and leave some more time just to think and empathize with people. But yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, I think as managers, we are forcing folks to take the time with new employees. We make sure we pair them up with somebody who is in charge of like contacting them, having a more personal conversation. How are you doing? And yes, constantly reminding employees managers, there's 5 minutes to just ask people how they're doing, a little bit more personal questions, checking on people. So those are things that were organically happening in the office that are not, and we just don't think of it, and we're burning out. So I think as managers, we need to continually remind our employees and our supervisors to do that, to just build it in as part of their job, to build a culture, to keep the culture together. It doesn't come easy or naturally.
And I would add on, back at Cox, we've had a few success stories around it's easy to kind of blanket term pandemic, but the pandemic plus the social unrest and how those kind of played into each other, those resulted in, or last year resulted in, some renewed efforts to bring inclusion and diversity, right? Became the focus. So we find at Cox that there are groups that we're less comfortable interfacing and having discussions around some things that you just didn't really have to pay attention before that are now having these way more healthy interactions. So the ability to have tough conversations, I think collectively as an organization, we've matured some. And if we think about the reasons why there were these efforts to focus on employee engagement while we were all in the office, well, part of that was because you were dragging everybody away from home. So you needed a reason to keep people more engaged. So I say that to share that the objective has shifted. There's people spending more time with their families, spending more time at home in their own environments. So it's because there's less engagement in ways, in some measurable ways, less, maybe less culture. It's not necessarily a negative. It's more, it's also a shift of, what people are about generally in society. But yeah, just wanted to share that I think in Cox, this has been handled relatively well. For something that's unprecedented and something that only historians will really be able to tell the story on. But I really do appreciate what Aaron and Danny guys shared today about different ways of looking at engagement, customer engagement specifically.
I have a question. What are your thoughts about product augmentation? For example, how Tesla has changed, has revolutionized the whole car buying and selling experience, having it everything online or building charging stations for the customers. Danny or Aaron, if you would like to, share your ideas and thoughts about it.
Did we lose Aaron?
I think we Aaron had to drop just now.
Okay.
Yeah, so that just comes down to me then. There you go. Or anybody else that wants to chime in. But
It's a round table.
That's right, very round. Yeah. Yes, I'll kick us off and then you guys chime in. So as far as disruption and that kind of thing, like that's something we've seen over and over again through history. So the horseless carriage, or the horse gets disrupted by Henry Ford's automobile. So it totally makes sense that somebody like Elon Musk would try to disrupt the interstate system with his boring project stuff, the tunnels, or he'd try to disrupt the car industry with an electric vehicle that drives itself, autonomous things, all that. So I would expect disruption, innovation to continue. Somebody's gonna try to put somebody else out of business and take market share in that respect. So that's one of those things. I think the key differentiator now, though, like this season of disruption, is all around digital disruption. So companies that aren't investing in a digital future, I think are the ones that are going to suffer the most. So where Toyota, they're investing in digital environments and stuff like that in their cars, is probably not a big concern for them. But my local grocery store, that didn't have the ability to do curbside pickup, like they better have that now, because people are expecting it, not just because of COVID, but because of convenience. And so I think every industry will be disrupted if they're not making a digital presence investment in some way or another. It's just kind of the nature of this season. So in previous eras of history, there's been different kinds of things that would disrupt you, but this particular turning point, I think, is all around digital transformation, digital products for your customers.
And actually, if I may tie this comment to the previous question, right? I mean, Russell's question was about small organizations not having resources and the ability to adopt technologies like AI and so on. I think that's definitely changing. There's a lot of cloud products and solutions that are now becoming available that even allow smaller organizations to have access to that kind of technology, right? I mean, when you think about being a Salesforce.com partner, right? I mean, when I look at Salesforce.com and the AI technology that they embed in Salesforce Service Cloud, or when I look at, we work with another vendor or another OEM called Verint, and their knowledge management solution that has AI embedded in it. I mean, there is definitely a lot of democratization there. And when you think about tying it back to what Danny said, as a product company, if you are able to find a way to make your digital products accessible to the smaller and mid-sized businesses, not just the large enterprises. I mean, that is something that is already happening, and I mean, anyone that's in that space should be thinking about that.
I just want to piggyback on getting back to Russell's question. What we can think about is, engineering outcomes beyond engineering software. And I think part of my memory, Danny and or Aaron, both of you kind of made references to that. But if we consider that the attention to discussing these matters, discussing culture, and putting it in front of people as something that makes us ultimately more valuable or successful as an organization. Through creating that mastermind, getting people to engage with that, there's naturally going to be all kinds of solutions. If it's a healthy discussion, there's going to be all kinds of solutions that will emerge from that. And that actually transcends technological limits or budgets that we may see as constraints otherwise. So sure, easy for me to say Cox has, all the resources they need, but we don't see this as a spend or a financial solve here. We really see it as, people having to go home or sit here and get inspired to take on new skills or to grow personally in order to improve the culture of the company.
So,
Any other?
yeah, I have a question on kind of similar theme. We talked a lot about data and collecting data. Data is extremely important. So you have the tool, and also then you have sort of the structure and the discipline, because most small companies don't think about customer records or data governance. So how do you, what recommendation can you give to some of these companies that are very infant stage, whether it's because they're small and they don't have the resources, or just they're big and they never pay attention to the data, how to mine the data, how to collect, how to govern the data, and so forth. What are some of the trends that you're seeing then to help us accelerate that maturity, so we could actually do something with it? I mean, especially in particular as it comes to customer records, voice of the customer.
Anyone else to jump in first?
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to, but I do see that more than I would imagine, Pilar, where customers just don't recognize the treasure trove of data that's flowing through their systems. And so a company I was working with a couple of years ago, like they had an amazing access to data that they just never ever stored. It was completely in the user's control and stayed on the user's device. Like they never uploaded it to a cloud repository. Now that was really a downside for the consumer, because they could have taken that data and made all kinds of great new products out of it that would benefit the consumer. But they were just missing that opportunity. And so as I dug into them, and I'm like, why is this the case? Why are we not, leveraging this to better the customers? There's so much we can do. And they basically said, we just don't have time to get around to it. And so I think a lot of places are missing opportunities because they're too busy focused on other things. Now, the challenge with that is, like, that's probably the architectural runway, to use a scaled agile framework term, but like building out that capability is the one thing that's going to create the next super disruptive product that really differentiates in the marketplace, but they're not taking the time to get around to it. So I think 5 years ago, people, companies maybe just didn't realize how important data was, but now it's starting to sink in more and more. So it's more trying to smooth that out, make it possible, help sort through all the options and find the ones that are best. But I think people are starting to see some of that potential use of the data where they didn't see it before. And at the same time, you got to balance it with new regulations and how far you can go with that data, which and stay abreast of that. So it's a balancing act on that, but definitely, like, just a little bit of brainstorming, you can start to imagine some great benefits you can provide to your customers with data that most companies have at their fingertips. They aren't doing yet.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, from our experience, I mean, we work with a lot of small and mid-sized organizations as well from a consulting perspective, and one of the challenges that we see is that sometimes these smaller organizations, they go off and try to capture all kinds of data without really having an idea of the sense of purpose or who's going to capture that data, or when in that process, when in that life cycle of working an opportunity or handling a customer complaint, do you really need to capture that data, right? So the way we try to help our customers think about it is, you've got a customer persona that you're trying to target. You're trying to build a journey around that customer. When you look at these data elements, try to think about where does it map to in that process, in that journey, and try to think about what are the things that you really need a human to capture, and what are things that a system can help capture for you. Don't try to make a human put in things that system can capture for you, right? And try to keep your employees from having to do unnecessary grunt work. Allow the system to do some of these things for you, but don't just collect data with no real sense of what you're going to be a little bit more intentional with the data collection. And when you look at it from that perspective, it allows you to have a little bit more a better approach to kind of managing what data you're collecting. And over time you will think about how do you slice and dice and capture more bits and pieces of information at each step of that process, but don't start out with that crawl, walk, run kind of thinking around capturing data.
Modeling, basically, you know, data modeling, how to.
Yeah. But tie it around those processes that you're trying to model for your customers.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at how the companies are hiring anthropologists, I mean, I really like the idea that, you know, they're trying to read culture, you know, behaviors. So, you know, have AI models, have your big data, but also have a wide lens to read your customers, what is happening inside your company, and how you sit in that ecosystem as a company. So I think that's where the intelligence and business agility comes into picture. Good.
Thank you. So I know we're basically out of time. It's 5:25 Eastern. Do we have any other questions from the attendees? No, well, great. We'd like to thank Danny. Thank you very much for your time. It was very, very insightful. We encourage everybody to, you have our names to connect via LinkedIn if you have any desire to continue the conversation. And if you like to connect with us at TAG, all the information is on the Technology Association of Georgia website. We do have we have a great society, small group, but mighty. We're always looking for new members. So let us know if you're interested in participating or being part of the society. So with that being said, well, thank you very much, everybody, and have a great evening. It was a pleasure seeing you all.
Danny,
thank you all.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Pilar and Afi. Yep.
Thank you, Swami.